which is no longer in existence because of some of the issues that we've all kind of gathered here to discuss and provide solutions for. I went to the mighty Morgan State University.
Yeah.
I got my college degree, and then I went to work for corporate America, and I watched two entrepreneurs in my own family be very successful. My father was an architect who built houses in northeast Baltimore, really all across the state, and my uncle's a very successful attorney here in Baltimore as well. So that inspired me to own my own business. And so why is all of this important to me? I'm not a community land trust. I don't participate in that, not yet. But this is all important to me because I'm a citizen of Baltimore. I'm a product of Baltimore. I am Baltimore. I grew up here. I caught every bus that you can imagine, the 5, the 23, the 22, every subway. I've seen all the development that's gone on downtown. I remember when it was a mess downtown. I remember when there was no lighting. And I've seen the development go on downtown. And that's great. That's pretty for outsiders coming to Baltimore. But the important thing is that we develop the community surrounding Baltimore. I take a great pride in providing a business that gives jobs. Although it's not that many jobs, we've provided jobs to youth in Baltimore from ages 16 to 50. I mean, we've hired we've hired over 60 people in Baltimore alone, just in and out of the restaurant because it's a high turnover, and I take great pride in that. So all of this is important to me because I'm a community person. This is what we do. We're not just a restaurant. I'm not just a restaurateur. We do things for the community and to help build the community. When we build community, we build businesses. And we build businesses, we build up the community. These small businesses like myself, Terra Cafe, Birdland, Grindhouse, businesses like that are what employ these youth that are coming up through the city. And that's what we're here for. We're not just here for some self-serving, self-interest type of situation. No, we are here because we all have to live here in this city. We need to see the city thrive from every single aspect. When people come here to this city, they're not coming just to downtown. They're coming to see what happened at Penn North. They want to see the redevelopment. They want to see the work and effort that goes on. Many people remember what Pennsylvania Avenue used to be, what North Avenue used to be. What's the future of Baltimore? That's what we're creating when we use these land trusts to develop the people. And that's what it's about. Not just about downtown, it's about developing the surrounding communities in Baltimore and developing the people. Thank you.
Wait to see if there's a picture of me going to pop up here. Good afternoon. My name is Roxy Herbekian. I'm the president of Unite Here Local 7. Unite Here is a union in the United States and Canada that represents folks in the hospitality industry. Hotel workers, food service workers, casino workers, in-flight airport workers, the folks you see when you go through BWI Airport serving beer, wine, food, those are our members. So we're here today because, our members have discussed a lot what the changes are in Baltimore. Earlier, Peter referenced the changing economy. We used to have steel, we used to have heavy industry. There were a lot of good union jobs where people were able to support themselves and their families. You still run into a lot of folks who are like, yeah, well, I was able to go to college because my dad worked in the steel mill or my uncle worked in the steel mill. Now we have an economy that is service-based. The hospitality industry is the third largest industry in the city. So now instead of a kid graduating and going to the steel mill to get a job, they're going to a hotel, they're going to a restaurant. And all of them are not as fortunate to go to work with some of the local businesses, like the Land of Kush. A lot of them end up working for the Marriotts and the Hiltons and the Aramarks and the Sodexos. So our union is working very hard to organize and push up the wages and the standards in those jobs. We've discussed a lot in the last year how that's really important, but it's not really the whole story for our members. Our goal is to improve the lives of hospitality workers and their families in the city. And while a piece of it is a better job, another piece of it is what's the housing that's available. what opportunities are there? And we've seen already members pushed out of certain neighborhoods close into downtown. So we're fortunate to have in this town organizations like United Workers, the Baltimore Housing Roundtable, that have taken on the piece of the technical aspects of how to solve that. That's certainly not something we're experts in, and we really appreciate and want to thank them for doing that. What I wanted to address is, I think for all of us in this room, now that we see that this is a viable way to address the problem of community residents being forced out of the neighborhoods, because look, everyone wants to see Baltimore look beautiful, and parks and gardens. We want to make sure our members are still going to be afford to live here when that happens. And this is, and we've been thinking about, well, so okay, great. So what do we do about that besides complain about it? And I think we see that these community land trusts are really workable, viable solutions. Certainly we appreciate the example from Boston. I mean, that's incredible. And that is what I'm speaking for our members and other workers in the hospitality industry, what people want. To be able to live in a safe neighborhood where they're happy to have their kids go out and play in the neighborhood, play in the streets, have something to do, and not have to travel an hour to come into downtown to go to work. So we're really pleased to support this initiative. And I just want to say that many of you are probably getting ready to or have already started engaging in the local political process. And we have included in our interviews with candidates the question, will you support a $20 million investment? We've certainly seen way more than that invested in downtown over the years. And, you know, it hasn't trickled down into the neighborhoods. We need to put it in the neighborhoods. So I would just encourage all of you that are, maybe are, or are going to be, or are thinking about getting active, that we put this issue on the forefront so that we can elect a city council and a mayor that's going to support these initiatives and make it a reality in Baltimore. Thank you.
I'd like to invite some folks to come to the table because we are going to do Q&A. And I'd like to invite Peter, Linda, Ann, and Harry to come back to the stage here to the panel. I could tell from the applause that the presentation was well received, it was clear, it was concrete, and it was passionate. Now that you have heard this presentation, I want to reiterate our call to action. We are asking, we're demanding that we commit $20 million of public bonds annually invested in nonprofit and community land trust housing via the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And we demand that 20 million public bonds annually to deconstruct vacants, hire returning citizens, and create green space and opportunities for urban agriculture. Establish a land bank to facilitate the disposition of vacant properties or empower the Vacants to Values program to facilitate property acquisition for CLT development. We demand that we strengthen and enforce the local hiring provisions, that city residents are trained and priority given to returning citizens from incarceration for employment in the deconstruction and the rehabbing of vacant property. Finally, in our no-nonsense demands, we are asking that we support municipal and financial experts to work with community leaders and other stakeholders on implementing community master plans, providing technical support, and ensuring participation by a diverse group of those most impacted by the development decision. Do you all have a problem with those demands? Can we affirm those demands, please? I am certain with the vibrant and intense presentation that you listened to for the last hour and 10 minutes that there are some questions. We will entertain a few questions. If you have a question, please stand so I can see you. And we will have a person come to you with the mic. Would you go to this brother here first, please? Give us your name and then your question. Is it on air? I am before the technology world, so all of this just fascinates me.
Still learning too.
Hey, everybody. Mike Scott, Equity Matters. I'm thrilled by this report and its timing. The question is really to lift up. When we talked about this initially 2 years ago with vacancy value was coming online, there was such a visceral reaction, and my business instincts kicked in, that it was such a visceral reaction that they did not want to talk about land trust. That question really needs to be looked at, because I think what you're putting forth, many communities have supported, but civil society's voice here in Baltimore is not as strong as it should be when it comes to policymaking. And before you were there, John Barrows was there, we visited with him, and now he's in an administration that supports that. So now's the right time. But what say you about how you have practiced, because having a racial equity lens is important, but building it into an accountability practice is a totally different thing. And you all have lifted up a model where, to my knowledge, you hard code people that otherwise wouldn't have actual power. Because what we see in this city is black pain being benefited by white jobs often. And we have to be careful about that. And we also have to be intentional about how we build our power in civil society here differently. And so I wonder, what might you say about how we can accomplish that? Thank you.
Sure. Thanks. Yeah, as you said, DS&I's real focus from the beginning has been around resident leadership and residents really having the answers to the problems of the neighborhood. We're a very unique organization in that every 2 years, the entire 35-member board of directors is re-elected in an open, transparent community process. You have to campaign. You have to come and give a speech. You get elected in a closed ballot election. The other thing that makes some people uncomfortable is that in order to reflect, since the beginning, in order to reflect the diversity of the neighborhood, there are actually seats. There are 4 white seats, there are 4 African American seats, 4 Latino seats, and 4 Cape Verdean seats. Now, not everyone likes that idea, and you always end up having, sometimes a white person's like, I don't really want to run for a white seat. It's like, well, that's your seat, and they all have to be residents. But sometimes you'll have African American Latino residents stand up and say, white people aren't 25% of this neighborhood. Well, come on, they should only get 1 seat. But the way DS&I said was, we're going to start with this, and we will readjust as we go, but we want to put out there that because of that, and because of the fact that we also have 4 youth seats, that means right there, 20 of the 35 seats are residents of the neighborhood. We don't have one. We started off with 1 youth seat a long time ago. It went to John Barrows, who I'll talk about in a second, who immediately demanded 3 more board seats. Many of you have been on boards where a lot of grown-ups talk, and then they turn to the one young person and say, what do you think? You good, okay, anyway, next topic. So he immediately demanded a youth organizer, a budget, and 3 more seats. John later became the executive director of Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative, ran for mayor 2 years ago, and is now the chief of economic development for the city of Boston. So it is hard-coded and built in that not only should you be involved in the neighborhood, you should also be running for office, you should also be going inside and outside of the structures. The other seats on the board are reserved for local businesses, community development corporations, religious institutions, and other stakeholders. So that's the way we kind of hard-code it in. If the community doesn't like what's going on, they can get rid of the entire board and start over. So that's how we've done it in the Dudley example, and it might not be for everyone, but it does get to that point. What it means is that 80% of our staff are people of color, most of them living in and around the neighborhood. Many of our youth leaders are now in positions of leadership in the organization. So it's something that just kind of recycles through, and that's a really important point.
Thanks. Hi, this was excellent. My name is Jennifer Bryan. I'm an organizer with Organizing Neighborhood Equity DC in DC. And I had two questions. The first is, you talked about when Dudley Street was first starting, that businesses weren't really interested in investing in the area, so it was, you know, the ask of city government to turn over some land was a bit easier. But what about communities that are kind of already in the throes of gentrification? Is that still a viable model? And then second, if you could talk a little bit more about financing, especially in the beginning, and for other folks, I know you're pursuing $20 million from the city, but are there other financing options that are being pursued also? Thank you.
So, just quickly, I think we were able to, on the financing question, we were able to get a $2 million loan program-related investment from the Ford Foundation because we had organized and had a master plan and sort of ripped up the city's plan. And that allowed us to go in and purchase properties which at the time were pretty cheap. But it has been a struggle, and I think to your first point, most of the neighborhoods in Boston don't have 30 acres of blighted land sitting around anymore, right? And so we had Land Trust start in Chinatown. We just helped the Chinatown Community Land Trust start. They have a lot of energy. They have no city-owned land, and so they're looking at different models for how they insert themselves as part of community benefits agreements with private development, that a portion of those would go on to a land trust. Other communities have more land, but still access to financing is the issue. That's why we're doing exactly what you're doing today. We're doing the exact same thing because we need access to land. We need priority for land. We need access to financing, acquisition funding. We also need technical assistance for land trusts. So I'm going to take this report and take it right back to Boston because it's a similar story. And there's no magic pool of funding if you call yourself a CLT. You still have to slog through and try to figure it out. So I wish I had an easier answer for you. I think during the foreclosure crisis, we lost out on a lot of opportunities to buy foreclosed homes because investors would just line up outside the door and be like, $200,000, I'll take it. And we just didn't have access to that kind of money. So there's no easy answer, but that's what we're struggling with.
And one thing to say on that is that the city for a long time, like a lot of cities, has divided development into economic development and community development. And economic development is something they fund and they participate in. And you'll see today, tomorrow, you'll see an announcement of Westport or the Port Covington development. And the city uses TIFs, they use bonds, they use cheap land to do economic development. When it comes to community development, historically, that's the federal government's issue, and that's the federal government who finances that. So in terms of financing, what we're saying is you see what the federal government is doing, and you see where it's going. Now let's start to have a city-financed community development program, and let's get the communities involved in the same thing that downtown developers get, and that's cheap land and public subsidies.
I just want to address the issue of financing. We are at the point now in which we are trolling for funds. We've been writing proposals, submitting grant proposals, and we've also talked to a number of financial institutions. Many of the banks are obligated to reinvest in community. There's a Community Reinvestment Act. So we're thinking that we may even be able to get some foreclosed properties. We are not in an area where we have lots of land that's vacant. We have a lot of abandoned homes, vacant foreclosures, and we want to get our hands on some of those. One of the things that financial institutions seem to like about our plan is the fact that a lot of the properties that we've looked at are in fairly decent condition, and as a result, we could probably acquire them and renovate them and sell them for less than the market value, and as long as they appraise at more than the market value, the financial institutions are very, very happy to go along with that. But right now, we're trying to raise funding for our first 1 to 4 homes, and hopefully we will get those underway sometime during this year.
And just one thing, just about community development, at least in my experience, in another life I used do development for a community development financial institution. So even when you think about community development in terms of going to banks for financing and that sort of thing, you have to also understand that they may not necessarily be interested in the market in which you are in, because the difference with the land trust is that it is about fair development as opposed to market-based development. And that's an issue that we have to explain. If there is not a situation where it's the market to kind of like drive up the price, the land, and that sort of thing, that doesn't necessarily fit within their daily life. And so it's a longer term process. And also remember that while they might be interested in the mortgage piece of it, the acquisition and the rehab is something totally different in terms of financing that particular property.
Hi, I'm Paolo Gregory Harris with the Ngoma Foundation, and we are serving as a backbone organization for the redevelopment of the Old Town neighborhood, which is now in the process of working with developers, significant developers in town, community stakeholders, community residents to evolve a process where holistic development includes the bricks and mortar development, human development, and economic development. So it's looking like it's gonna move, and one of the things that we're exploring is community land ownership, land trust, land banking, as a way to create a win-win situation with developers, where the community owns the land, so that can maybe reduce some of the costs to the developers and the investment, and then those resources can then perpetually support the community. And I'm wondering, I know there's a little bit that's been done, I saw in Albuquerque, where there are businesses, like a significant economic development effort in addition to the housing side, but also looking at business development and land trust in that. And if you know of models that are really working with that. And the second question is, with all the money that Hogan has set aside for, I think, demolishing a lot of vacants in Baltimore, is there a way, does anybody know about that, and is there a way to somehow merge that process by utilizing those dollars to create land trust?
Well, I'll just speak a little bit about the Hogan money, and I'm only speaking as a president. Just following the news, there's no new money. So that's the first thing. And it seems as recently as I heard this morning, maybe about 700. So it's unclear about there being a whole 700 all being new. I don't know if anybody else has more information about that.
But just briefly on that, there are members of the Baltimore City delegation who are interested in attaching some strings to the Project Core money, to perhaps the community legacy money. There is private activity bonds, private business activity bonds, that's part of the program, the package of programs that the governor laid out in the Project Core announcement. Whether that's new money or not, the fact is it needs to be appropriated in future years, and that needs to go through the legislature. So there's an opportunity to influence that at least, as long as the governor puts the money in the budget, which right now seems to be an issue. In terms of commercial development, I don't know if Gary, you can speak to that.
Yeah, I think it is, the land trusts are right there, the potential is there. I'd say that's the weakest area in terms of land trust development nationally. We're just producing our first commercial building on the land trust, hopefully next year. There are other communities like Burlington, Vermont, Champlain Housing Trust, which have a lot of commercial opportunities. I think the city of Burlington gets very creative about how to put those on land trust. I could definitely talk to you later as well. I'll give you my card. There might be some other examples, but it is the weakest, it's sort of the weakest area. Housing and open space and farmland and other things have been much more developed. And I think that's a challenge for the land trust movement to really show that that can be a viable tool, because this is about jobs and economic development as much as it is about housing.
One of the things that Lehigh hopes to do at some point is to start a business incubator and provide support and networking opportunities for small businesses in the community, so that the businesses and the community are owned by community residents and hire community residents.
Very quickly, because we're running out of time, and I want to get a person in our overflow room, and I want to get in our last 3 questions.
This is going to be a concern. And first I want to say, I think the land grants are a great idea. There is a goal in cities like Baltimore that have been designated international economic zones to have global corporate campuses with global corporate factories. And with that comes housing that is called co-op, and it has workers living on the campuses, often low-income people, with the city centers where the wealthy live. That is a model that I don't think anyone in Baltimore wants to see. So my concern is that as we implement this, we keep in mind that we do not want these kinds of land grants attached to corporate campuses with the idea that at some point they're going to become that model. We want to have land grants that are integrated within the communities, not in large sectors that are going to eventually kind of look like public housing, but individually all through all communities. The bond market is getting ready to crash. It's collapsing. We have bonds tied to our public schools, written in a way nobody knows, and likely those bonds and the school property will default into the hands of the investors. This is a concern when you're writing bonds tied to housing, because the same thing can happen. So how would you address these concerns?
I